Hey,
Okay, I'm ready. Thank you.
absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Wednesday, August 16th, 2023. It's 6:45 PM. I call the meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Our first order of business is to discuss and act on litigation, Town of New Shoreham versus Empire Productions, Inc. Can I have a motion to go into closed session? Second,
Second,
all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed, no.
And
We're in closed
I
session.
am recusing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, Sven.
Right there, you're in close session. And, we asked, you go in the lobby area.
Is James here? Oh, he's probably on the other one, right? How are you? Hey, Jess. How are you? I haven't seen you all summer. Have you been busy? Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, either way, they'll still probably get it.
I think you're okay with that. You didn't participate. Well, whatever you feel comfortable doing is fine.
I'm just thinking. You've made, motion's been made.
Sweet.
No. Just until we finish the closed session thing.
Tell me when you're ready.
All right.
You were born ready. Isn't that the saying? It's gonna reconvene the open session. I would make a motion to seal the minutes. All those in favor of sealing the minutes indicate by saying aye. We did have a vote during the closed session. Motion was I made a motion to respond to Mr. Pollard's attorney that the council's position regarding the operation of games for free is still the operation of games in violation of the ordinance. Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. There you go. All right, on to the town council agenda, public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? Come aboard. Will you make sure that the green light is on and that you're relatively close to the microphone?
Now the green lights.
Oh, okay, now it's on, right, okay, thank you.
David, you have a new job.
Hi, I'm Nancy Miles. I don't think I need to be that close.
Then
377 Sunset, and once again, I'm here about noise. I actually found your ordinance online and thought that it was very well written. I just don't think it's enforced. Whoever wrote it, I believe the town council, I don't know when it was actually written, was concerned about the noise leaving the premises. That was what I inferred from what I was reading. New licenses had to give notice to property owners within 200 feet from the premises. This is what I found at the Spring House tonight. Since last night I called the police because I could sing to the music, which wasn't very good. And tonight they have a piano player. So I looked at the ordinance and the guy is within 25 feet of the building, but there's no way to make this particular speaker directional towards the building, which is what it says in the ordinance, because once again, I believe the town council's intent was keep the noise as close to the property as you can. Okay. Clearly, I like it quiet. But I'm only one person. I'm going to ask that you put this on a vote to the town and see what everybody says and go with the majority rules. If everybody is happy with the way things are, I can live with that. If they're not, then I think it needs to be addressed. The other thing that I found somewhat surprising in that we do send somebody to be certified and that costs money. Calibration of the equipment costs money. The equipment costs money. And I don't think the person going around testing sound does that on a volunteer basis. I'm assuming he's compensated by the town. Why is it only $250 for a license? When I said to someone what my thought was, they said, wow, that's a great idea. I think it should be $1,000 a week. That way, people who really want outside entertainment, let them sign up for 10 weeks. They want 1 week, 1 day, $1,000, not a problem. But I think that sort of self-limits it and it takes the burden off the taxpayers. Since once again, what am I going to say? I kind of resent my tax dollars going to support businesses making more money at the expense of my quality of life. And with that, you won't hear from me on noise anymore.
You're
I'll be
you're
quiet.
always welcome.
No, you've been gracious. So that was my thought, raise the fee. And then find some way to, I don't know how you determine with an omnidirectional speaker. They can't put that towards the building unless you put in there that they have to have a box speaker that you can, and that was probably what, I mean,
Mhm.
when I grew up, that's all they had were the big box speakers.
Same here.
I know. Yeah, getting all this.
Have you seen them now?
So I don't know. When I drove up there, I was very surprised when I saw that big stick standing up. And you could hear the piano everywhere.
Mhm.
So in any event, I want to thank you again for your
Thank
time
you.
and give it some thought.
Absolutely. We have a few items on our consent agenda. We have the approval of the August 2nd minutes and the open and closed session for August 7th. And some thoughtful commentary on short-term rental regulations. I really appreciate that. If you haven't click through on this consent agenda, because we do try to acknowledge the written correspondence that we get from people, and often it's very helpful and thoughtful. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next item is to hold a public hearing on an ordinance change that was suggested by Mark Tilson, has been through planning. This is an amendment to section 513D1F, accessory dwelling units by special use permit -lot area. I see Allison is here. Hi, Allison. How are you?
Hi.
I don't. Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you. I'd make a motion to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Okay, public hearing's open. Start again. Hi, Allison. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you.
Do you want to walk us through this proposed ordinance, please?
Is Mark in the audience tonight?
He is.
Okay, great. So Mark had put this forward. So I don't know if Mark wanted to present this.
I'd like to hear from Mark, but I think I'd appreciate it if you'd walk us through it, Allison.
Sure.
Thank you.
So several months back, Mark Tilson had put forward some recommended language to change a new policy that had been adopted back just last year in 2022. If you recall, we made some significant amendments to the section 513 of the zoning ordinance that relates to accessory dwelling units. And a lot of those changes were to encourage the creation of more accessory dwelling units to try to address the need for attainable housing on the island. So one policy related to giving, you may call it a density bonus, but it was allowing for on substandard lots an additional 1% in lot building coverage. If you were to, if there were certain lots on the island that, if a property owner wanted to construct an accessory dwelling unit, however, they would exceed their building lot coverage, and therefore would be, not allowed to do that based on current zoning. So that policy was put in there to give that bonus and give some more flexibility. However, there was also in establishing that, there was a requirement that it be restricted in perpetuity, that use remain in perpetuity, a deed restriction on the property. So there were no property owners that had come forward since that had been adopted to utilize that policy, that density bonus, take advantage of that. So, it is possible that having that in perpetuity was one of the factors or main factor in not allowing for that. So, but Mark had come forward with some language and some thoughts on a similar policy to try to achieve what we were looking to achieve, but may be more successful in creating at least one or more accessory dwelling units. So
Part of the advantage, I should say, for people who haven't been watching this is that Mark is actually living this right now. You know, and it came from the experience of someone who's actually trying to build a 513 and seeing where
Yeah,
there
trying to-
were areas of the underlying ordinance that were potential barriers for the development of 513s.
right, so really putting it into practice, that
Right.
policy, that language, seeing how it worked. You know, he was trying to apply it for his specific development, and it wasn't working for that purpose. So the planning board and town staff had worked with the applicant to come up with some modified language. He had some language, and Mark and the town went back and forth a little bit and came up with some language that the planning board did vote to put forward a positive recommendation to the town council for you to consider for adoption this evening. So what it does is, I can pull it up here. So some of it clarifies things as you, but it's taking allowing for up to 600 square feet of the new accessory dwelling unit to not be included in the calculation of lot building coverage, just for the purposes of creating that accessory dwelling unit.
That's only in substandard lots, right?
And we're talking about, correct, substandard lots by area. So we kind of, again, looking at the language again, prior to in 2022, last year, when we had drafted it, lots less than 120,000 square feet in lot
Right.
area, substandard lot by lot area, because depending on the zoning district, that lot size may vary. So we're talking specifically substandard by lot area. So if the lot is smaller than current zoning for that specific zoning district, they may need a little more flexibility in that lot building coverage calculation. So some of the square footage not, I shouldn't say square, the accessory dwelling unit that's being created, that footprint there would
Yep.
be taken out of that calculation, so that they would still be able to meet zoning and move forward with their application.
Right.
It is still through a special use permit, so it would, go before the boards, that specific application. And then the restriction, rather than in perpetuity, there was some discussion back and forth, but what was put forward was 15 years. So that would kind of, trying to create that balance there, like wanting to make sure that the property owner is creating it for the purpose of providing attainable housing, and it served that purpose for a significant amount of time
Mm-hmm.
to get that bonus.
Right.
So if I'm a devious landowner with a sub-conforming lot, and I get approval to do this with the intent that I'm not going to use it for the intended purposes, and it's really for my family, how do I get penalized so we don't have people going around what the intent of this is for?
Mark, would you like to approach? Fantastic. Good question.
Repeating quite a bit of what our friend Allison just informed the council. I'd also like to give you a
Name.
little bit of travel.
Hey, Mark, would you do your name for the record and turn on your button? Fantastic.
It's bright green.
Beautiful.
My name.
David, will you verify that, please? All right, great.
Mark A. Tilson, Tillson.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Yes, I think Allison hit on the nose. The reason I started looking into the zoning ordinance was not only for self-serving reasons, but also I had discussed this with other property owners in the community that were interested in building 513s. So what I started with was going into, as I said, going into the ordinance. Let me get my glasses here. In my original intent of the request is to amend the zoning ordinance so as to allow a property owner additional lot building coverage for the construction of an accessory dwelling unit on a substandard lot. My original plan was to amend the current zoning definition of lot area,
Right.
which
Remember that.
excludes the street right of way. So you
Right.
have to, if you have a right of way going through a substandard lot, you have to exclude that area
Yep.
before you get into your calculations. So on a substandard lot, a street right of way can eat up a lot of real estate,
Yeah.
substantially reducing the allowable area for additional building. By allowing the area of a right of way to be included in the total lot area, that increases the permitted lot building coverage, obviously. As the State Zoning Enabling Act and the definitions within the act control, the town cannot change the language in our zoning definition. It was my thought to add a sentence to the definition, allowing the inclusion of this right of way in determining the total lot area only on substandard lots and only for the construction of accessory dwelling units. During my presentations to the planning board, the members voiced support for the amendment to allow the additional building coverage for the accessory dwelling units. But the board had concern, as well as a solicitor, is amending the definition of lot area, the right place in the zoning ordinance for the bonus lot coverage. I agreed to the planning board suggestion to continue the matter. And then we had further discussions, we made suggestions. Allison was, of course, very helpful on this. And it was decided to keep the dimensional requirements applying to accessory dwelling units in zoning section 513. The amendment you have tonight will allow by right an additional 600 square feet of building lot coverage on, again, only on a substandard lot by area for new accessory dwelling units. So if you don't meet the frontage requirements for some reason, that's not going to count.
Right.
It has to be by area. Another discussion of importance, which Allison mentioned, I had with the planning board considering the proposed amendment, was the requirement in the current zoning section, which requires the property owner to execute and record against the deed to their property a restriction in that exchange for the bonus and lot coverage for the new accessory dwelling unit that shall remain part of the town's year-round housing stock in perpetuity. Perpetuity is a really long time. My discussions around town found that, as I told you, a lot of property owners considering constructing accessory dwelling units, including the family I was working with, would not be in favor of putting a government easement on their private property in perpetuity. The amendment in front of you provides for a restriction of 15 years on any new accessory dwelling unit using the lot area bonus. As you may be aware, a new private sector housing initiative of the island is offering to assist property owners with startup grants for new accessory dwelling units. That housing initiative requires a 15-year rental commitment by the owner in order to receive the funding. The planning board thought that the proposed amendment should have the same 15-year rental agreement, which I support as it's a reasonable amount of time. I asked the council to support the proposed zoning amendment, and I thank the council for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Again, really quickly, I think the creative solution of 600 square feet is great. It's an interesting number, but I will tell you the one word in the 513 that I think has held up more housing in ADUs is the perpetuity word. And that in and of itself, I think has eliminated a lot of participation because it's a long time. And so I think that of all of the changes is probably the most important to hopefully spur more ADUs and more housing. So I love this. I'm more than in favor.
Any other comments from the audience? Go ahead, Mark.
Addressing your question, your concern, which is a very good one, also came up at the planning board level about someone who takes the bonus, goes through the process, builds it, and all of a sudden turns it into an Airbnb or whatever reason is not using it according to the ordinance. Section 513 is very explicit in enforcement. That's an enforcement issue. Also, questions came up in front of the planning board, which were great. What happens after the 15 years? And again, that is addressed in our section 513 under terminant abandonment and release. There is a way that the homeowner has to come in, inform the town they're no longer to be renting the 513 as an accessory apartment, and they have to change that use to a use that's allowed under the current zoning. If for some reason they go through that whole process and again they're not behaving themselves, again that's an enforcement issue. And they could be subject up to fines of $500 per day, again, according to the state enabling legislation. The only change I would make in termination, abandonment, and release, as I read it today, would to add to that section a requirement that if the homeowner is abandoning the 513, that he does it by way of a building, a change of use building permit that is signed by the owner of the property and then recorded in the document. So it would just be another enforcement tool.
But that's not on the agenda today.
Right.
No, it's not.
I don't want to confuse you.
Yeah, thank you.
But it's certainly worth ongoing conversation. As you know, we have this rump group working on some of this stuff as well. So hopefully.
And the other thing, I don't know if you do know, but the 513s are reviewed every 2 years. So in theory, the building inspector is going and checking each one of them. So, yeah, I know, but. Right.
Yep. George, did you want to speak?
Yes.
Come aboard.
Thank you, by the way. I have to duck down here?
Yes,
My goodness, here, I'll hold it up.
perfect.
My name is George Davis. Well, that's maybe too loud, isn't it? Anyway, I'm at 400 Seaweed Lane, and I have not discussed this with Mark, but I thank you for bringing this forward. I came in front of the council about a year ago to basically voice my opposition to the language in perpetuity, which, and I quote, I said, it's a very long time. It doesn't make any sense to me as a tool to encourage people to build 513 to have something that really won't work for almost anyone I can imagine. So I do stand in support of this, and quite by accident, the lot size that I have, the substandard lot, 1% increase is almost 600 square feet, a little bit less. So I think you put a lot of thought into what a lot of the size of the substandard lots actually are. So that 600 feet is not just a number that's pulled out of the air, in my opinion. Anyway, thank you, Mark, for bringing this forward, and thank you for considering this amendment.
Will you stop shouting?
No,
Mark.
Also, just a little housekeeping here. In the proposed amendment in front of you, at the very bottom, it says that the 15 years will begin at the date of the issuance of the certificate of occupancy.
Right,
I
that
want
makes
to make
sense.
sure that is correct. The document is actually a certificate of use and occupancy. Just-
So that's in the memo, but not, where is
The
it?
very last line.
Oh. So it's certificate of occupancy and use,
Actually opposite, certificate of use and occupancy.
use and occupancy?
The certificate documents first the use. Is it a restaurant? Is it an accessory dwelling unit? Is it a business?
Right,
And
right,
then
right.
Secondly, the actual occupancy.
Okay, we'll make that change when we get to discussing and acting. Are there any other comments? Anybody else want to speak in the public hearing portion here? No? We're gonna close the public hearing, then we're gonna discuss an act, okay? Is that, so a motion to adjourn, close the public hearing, excuse me, not adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye. Opposed, no. Now we're in the discuss and act portion. Did you?
Okay. I
Do
I have some questions for Alice.
Great, fantastic.
So, Allison, I'm just curious, like, how many lots are we talking about? How many substandard lots of record are there, or like or a percentage? What percentage of our lots are substandard lots of record?
We did not do that analysis.
And then.
Do you have a guesstimate?
I was about to ask that. Yeah,
No, I mean, it's something that can be done using, GIS. I could do that. Each going by each zoning district. If it's just by lot area, figuring out the sizes that are under, it depends how detailed you want to get, like, because then you would take out what those lots that are already conserved or those lots that are not developable. So it's not necessarily a simple analysis. It might take, you could, like you said, give a rough estimate, but then know that there'd probably be more excluded from that. So it's something that can be done, but it just was not done for this purpose.
If I can, though, Allison, do you have a feeling that it's not just a few? I mean, there's in my opinion, there's a large number of small lots. I'll be careful here, substandard lots. Is that sort of accurate, Allison, or am I wrong?
I really don't, I don't want to give a number or an idea, but I mean, you hope that you want this, the purpose of the policy is to create housing, right? So unless we're trying to only put one or two units, add one or two units, hopefully this does allow more than just a few lots to take advantage of this policy.
but I think Molly's question is goes to scale. That's why no one's trying to pin you down to a number, but is it dozens or hundreds?
Well, I think there's also a line on substandard that prior to the enactment of the current zoning, which in residential A went from 2 to 3, I think quite a few people subdivided. I know quite a few people subdivided. And so any 2-acre lots became substandard as soon as the zoning changed. And I don't think those are necessarily the lots you're even talking about. I think the substandard lots tend to be significantly smaller than that. I mean, there are layers of this that could go on for perpetuity in conversation.
So that's something else I was curious about. You said that this was just changed like a year ago.
Yes.
So this in perpetuity, like how long has that been in the language?
So this was
I think it's
October. You had a
21.
public hearing in October of 2022 that I think you voted on it then. So it has not been in place very long, but the town has not seen any applications since it went in place in October. And I think
So
we
it's-
were
but
hearing
it's-
anecdotally, and I knew it was a concern, like when we were going through the amendment process, George had raised that concern about the perpetuity and, the fact that maybe the town hadn't received many inquiries, looking to explore that option seemed to be an indication that it might not be an effective policy.
Go ahead, Molly, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just gonna say, I'm not gonna quibble with taking out in perpetuity, but I feel like giving it less than a year. Like, it doesn't seem shocking that nobody's come in for. It doesn't seem shocking for that reason.
Can I,
It doesn't seem like.
And
a long
again,
time.
it was initiated, this is a private application, so for a zoning amendment, this was brought forward, you know, by a private individual, not by the planning board or the town, right? So it was initiated by Mark Tilson, who put it forward and, you know, then required the town to review and make a recommendation on it.
I mean, but we're still changing the ordinance for the town, regardless of what it's, regardless of who initiated it. Anyway.
No, but
I
I'm
guess
responding to, I was just trying to respond to the comment that it hasn't been long. It wasn't. The timing, the question of the timing of it, it wasn't initiated by the town.
No, I get it. No one was suggesting that. So for me, I hate to drive my friend, very good friend, George Davis crazy, but I'm a perpetuity guy. But I get why it's long. In my opinion, 15 years is too short. And as I was thinking about this and was noodling about it, I would favor 30 years, which is the standard term of a lot of mortgages, reasonably accepted number. And I think removes, I don't have a law degree, so I'm not burdened by it, but I think there are even sort of actual rules against having perpetuity in your ordinances. But to me, that's a reasonable number, 30. If you have to take a mortgage to build the 513, it's likely to be a 30-year mortgage, pretty standard. That's my opinion.
Allison, do we have anything from other towns that are doing something similar in what they have in their language? Not that that makes a difference one way or the other, how we go with this, but just what's the trend?
I'm not aware of any towns that have, that are incentivizing accessory dwelling units or
Yeah,
creating.
my bet is we might be the only town in Rhode Island that's actually trying to come up with ways to incentivize this kind of.
In my life, I've never heard of anything like
Right.
513,
Yeah,
any other.
yeah.
community. I think we're the only ones.
Yeah. So anyway, before we go to the 30, before I forget, can I just make a motion to change this from certificate of occupancy to certificate of use and occupancy?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Just, I figured I'd forget. So anyway, I would make a motion to make it 15 years, to make it 30 years.
And as is otherwise.
Yes.
Second that. Oh, sorry.
I think it's too long.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to extend it from 15 to 30, say aye. Yeah, oh, please. Sorry, Neil.
So I can get to 30. No, I'm sorry. I prefer 15, but I just don't quite understand the hook. I just want to catch the person who's doing this with the ill-conceived notion I'm pulling a fast one. I'm not quite sure I understand what the ramifications are to those people that bypass it with the intent of creating something. And it goes to Molly's point, and I'm not saying obviously everyone would do this, but we know we're going to have one or two people at least.
Yeah.
But if we have 100 properties and, 12 of them do it, this is now, so is there a hook specific? You commented, Mark, that $500 a day on violation of something, but I don't think it was specific to the no longer using it in the way it was intended.
Could I speak?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we where we've had problems going back to, oh man, every time we've tried to do something like this, it's always gotten hung up on the fear of what somebody's going to do, how somebody's going to abuse it. And I do think if nothing else, history has shown us that the people who are using the ordinance aren't the ones who are abusing it.
Right.
It's the people who are ignoring the ordinance in the first place. So that's, it's kind of an almost an academic question.
I
The
don't.
enforcement is totally different. That enforcement we have to have. And I know there are going to be a few that do, but I just, I've listened to this and I've listened to the people who are against using any, I remember the first time this came up and it was a brutal fight to get anything at all passed. I do think that sentiment has changed in this town. But you do what you can and hope it works. And if it doesn't work, change it.
So,
Go ahead, Molly.
well, I was gonna say, like, you think 30 years sounds like a really long time, and yet the first affordable housing project out here on Beacon Hill had a 30-year timeline, which is coming up very soon. And then those will revert. They won't be affordable any longer. So, we do have some things that are sunsetting after 30 years. And I don't think that subsequent, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think the other housing projects have that same piece to them.
That was the law at the time. That was the limit at the time. The 25.
Oh, they're 25.
That
not
was
30.
that was limit or 30, I'm sorry. Whatever, 25 or 30, I'm not sure which it is, whatever it is, that was the limit at the time. And that's changed.
Okay. So providing someone with an affordable year-round, or maybe not affordable, just year-round place to live for 30 years is a good goal. Like, entire families have grown up in those houses, and like their kids are off to college and people are retiring, and it's pretty great. So I don't know. I don't think it's a bad number.
I agree. I think it's a more than academic question. There's just as in all ordinances, all policymaking, there's a bargain that occurs. It's government would like this to happen. So we're going to do X, and in exchange for that, we want a substantial guarantee that the action that we've created the incentive for is actually going to remain. To me, 15 years is very brief, is pretty brief. I chose 30 literally because, I don't know, our first mortgage was a 30-year mortgage, and that seems like a reasonably well accepted term in real estate. That's kind of where I am.
If I can also add, I think, Neil, you're hitting on a really important point, which is, the people that will abuse, right? And how do we stop that? I think that we should, whether not tonight, but soon, look into with the planning board, even 513s, and figure out abuse and what are the penalties.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to throw this bathwater and the baby out because enforcement's not being done right, versus focusing on this, enabling this, and then saying, okay, now let's really tighten it up. Because historically, they've always gotten confused, and everybody starts getting caught up in the, oh my God, what's going to happen. So I guess I'm trying to separate. Mark, in your feeling right now, your landowner, is 30 years an impediment? Is 15 years, 30 years? I'm just asking your reaction. Honest reaction.
It will be another discussion with the family. We discussed the 15 years and they didn't have a problem with the 15 years.
You're still alive in 15 years, so I hope.
The only other comment I can make is I can understand the whole mortgage idea is a great thing, but if we go to 15 years now, that gives us 15 years to see if that's gonna work or not.
Yeah.
We're gonna change.
You know, go the other way
It's
around,
not,
too.
yeah, I'm not there on that. That's, yeah.
But it would be, to answer your question, it'd be another discussion.
Okay.
And I just,
Perfect, not an impediment though.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor to change 15 to 30. Oh, go ahead, George. No, go ahead.
Yell again. But
You've been. here
Actually,
for the
it's
whole
not-
Conversation.
I was thinking about something in terms of what was just said, not so much the 15 or 30 year, but in terms of the affordable housing projects versus this project. In my mind, the difference is with those, the town has provided something that has financial value to the individual who's now in that house. If someone constructs a 513 on their own dime, the town hasn't provided anything except the ability for them to spend their money. And they're not receiving anything for that.
Well, except the town has, because the town is giving a bonus density.
Right, to build something
Yeah,
for another person's
Right.
housing.
but,
That's a great altruistic kind of approach.
but it's not true that the town hasn't done anything. Hasn't given.
Hasn't provided a financial incentive.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see the two things as very distinctly different.
Yep,
That if someone's going
I
to
think it's a good
put
point.
money out to do something good for the town and doesn't expect anything back except the below market rent.
I agree, but I'm assuming you're gonna charge rent, so it's like not doing it really for free.
Well,
There's.
No,
plenty-
did I say for free?
Yeah.
That clearly is a misstatement. You're doing it at a loss as opposed to what the market would bear and probably not even paying off the mortgage if you were to take a mortgage for that construction problem. And I think that's what's been a holdup for many people who have thought, well, I'll build this, rent it out and pay off my mortgage with that rent and at least come out even and do something positive. But you really can't do that because mortgage rates, well, they've gotten worse, but you really couldn't do it even when they were less. So that's the thing. I mean, if people want to cheat, there's much better ways to cheat than that. And that's not really certainly where I'm coming from, or I think most people would be coming from. It's like, how do you make it so it really makes sense to help others without harming yourself, if you will?
Mhm.
You know, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
So I totally understand what you're saying. I think my point was more that it's the stability to
Yes.
allow someone to live in a place for an extended amount of time, you know, where they could raise a kid or two and live with their dog and age out in place on Block Island, which is a difficult thing to do right now.
All right, motion's on the floor. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
Amendment fails.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposed changes to the 513 as written. Oh, is that okay? Oh, with the change that Keith already made. You
Oh.
said.
I still have more questions.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Sorry, I just wasn't, because we were on an amendment, I didn't want to
Yeah,
ask questions
sorry.
that weren't related to the amendment.
I'll
No, so I just want to ask Allison another question. So the letter from the planning board says the concern was raised that a property owner may abandon the accessory dwelling unit in the future after being provided with the density bonus. Efforts should be made to mitigate this, and if there were unintended consequences, the policy can be reevaluated and future zoning amendments adopted. So it sort of goes to what Neil's been talking about, but I'm curious, like, what was the conversation? Did they raise?
Well, very
Thoughts?
similar, yeah, very similar to what the conversation is tonight, you know, just wanting to encourage the creation of units, but also wanting to make sure that those units being created aren't just used for a short period of time, you know, taking advantage of that density bonus, not used very long, and then being converted to another use that isn't providing that housing benefit. So all of what, your same similar conversation and trying to, negotiate that time. What is that correct time frame, right? To have that restriction in place, no restriction or in perpetuity, striking that balance so that you're encouraging people to create those units, but not encouraging people to take advantage of something just for the purposes of using it for something else in the future. So that's where kind of that 15-year, we had a prior draft had 10 years. And then at the planning board meeting in June, the planning board recommended doing the 15 years, but there are members that, still may have been concerned and want, not exactly, might have been willing to go more years, and others were comfortable with the 10. So, we're at 15 right now, but that's the conversation.
I have to say that I'm not going to support this ordinance at 15 years. I think 15 years is too short. If there's a number that works better for people, that's 20 or 25. I could get there, but 15, I think is too short.
And can I just ask, why do you feel it's too short?
Because I think 15 years it goes by very, very quickly. And I agree with Molly that, I view these things as houses, not temporary apartments. Apartments that might be more temporary. And I think for what substandard lot owners are getting here, I don't think it's too much to ask to commit to more than 15 years.
What plays out in my head though is if I'm the owner, and let's say I own the house and I've got 10 years old kids to 15, my life is very different in 15 years. So it seems reasonable at some point, family dynamic changes. So to lock someone in, to me, that's almost perpetuity. The family's bought a property, they're going to do the right thing for 15 years. If we were to do 30, which we're not, you're locking that family out of now saying, hey, I got 3 grown kids with, little kids. I want to use the house for a different means. I've done the right thing for the island for 15 years. That's kind of where I go shifting as an owner of the property. And then again, if you've got an island family living there, 15 years is a long time to live in a place, to have, continuity for that family. If again, who's to say they work out for that particular landlord or owner, but if they did 15 years and you're coming up on 15 years, I'm sure that owner is going to do the right thing and say, 15 years is up, you stay on, or, my kids are grown and I'm going to convert it now. So yeah, that's where my head went with 30 was just too long.
Yeah, I can see people coming down in different places on this. And as you guys know, I view these these accessory dwelling units as being essential to solving some of our problem. I have a very hard time getting over 15 years.
But don't you think 15 years will incent more people to do it? And
not necessarily. I think we've only had a year worth of experience on this.
So here's my other.
So I don't even think we have data that, you can, well, Sven, you can decide that was why people didn't do it, but it's been 15 months.
Oh, no, 515 has been around.
Oh, I know they have.
So it's a year of the perpetuity.
Yes.
I think we're talking, okay.
Yeah, exactly. But you're saying that the perpetuity has been a tremendous barrier.
I think in the last year, at least that's what I've heard from many people.
Yeah,
You and I are.
Yeah.
Well, so the other thing I was gonna say is that, before we bought a house, I moved around a lot, like 7-8 times in a 2-year span, like everybody else, right? And then I bought a house I can't afford and have had it for almost 27 years, right? So, which is a really long time. But I don't think that the feeling of housing instability has changed in the last 30 years. I feel like the housing instability that I felt 30 years ago still exists for people who don't have a stable place to live. So do we want to solve this problem for 15 years at a time, or do we want to solve this problem for longer?
Yeah, my thought of doing it so it's more kind isn't the right word, more amiable for the landowner to do it, and to what this gentleman said, invest the money, is I know in 15 years I can convert it because my life might change. I think it potentially can incent more people to do it now because they're not locked in. Who knows where you are? I mean, I look at my life where I was 15 years ago. I think I'd be living on Block Island. No. So I think it creates more opportunity now, realistically faster. And in 15 years, other people will have come on, or hopefully they're doing the same. And those non-conforming lots that didn't do it have new owners, and they do it the right thing for the island and for residents. I mean,
I agree.
Neil has more faith in people than I do.
I think it's about the opportunity, and I think it's about allowing that opportunity. Then I think we do need to follow up pretty strongly on the whole enforcement.
I mean, to Keith's point, I'm not adverse to saying 20 years, but I think you go above 20, I don't think you're going to get the incentive that we want.
So I'll make a motion to accept the 513 revisions as written, in addition to the changes that Keith already approved, or we already approved, which is the 600 square feet and 15 years.
And can I still finish asking Allison my last question? I just have one more question that I want to clarify, that I am afraid, I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding Allison. Section D and section E do not apply to F, right?
Hang on, I'm just pulling it up. Section D and E of do not apply to F.
You can't have 3 dwelling units on a substandard lot, is my question. Or can you?
So I'm just thinking this through, how it's written, applicability, each of these are representing kind of examples of which types of projects would require, which type of, accessory dwelling unit developments would require a special use permit rather than by right. So are you saying, could you stack them multiple?
Is there following this, is there some scenario in which you could end up with 3 accessory dwelling units on a substandard lot?
I'm thinking could be possible, just reading through this. If they had one created by right, and then a special use permit to create that second accessory dwelling unit, utilizing this special use permit subsection, creating 2. I mean, you'd have to go through the process of review before planning and zoning through a special use permit. It might be a legal question as far as utilizing 2. I think you could possibly. Again, I'm just trying to answer off the top of my head, that possible scenario. Because you could have an accessory dwelling unit, the special use permit allows for more than 1,200 square feet for an accessory dwelling unit. So you could have a 1,400 square foot accessory dwelling unit that also is on a substandard lot, utilizing that bonus. So that would be A and F. At the
How would,
same
how
time,
would,
again,
how would the language we're talking about adding override the limitation that's already there?
sorry, could you explain that question?
How would, you're not eliminating those limitations,
And not eliminating those
the
limitations?
limitations that are already in the ordinance,
Right,
those aren't being changed.
no. Those are all still applicable to, requesting a special use permit. The larger lot, the larger living floor area. The larger, right now, it's now 3 bedrooms by right. You could have a 4-bedroom unit with a special use permit. You could have 2 accessory dwelling units. And then for commercial 3, and then now this bonus for the lot building coverage. Yeah, those are all still applicable and in the ordinance. So your question is, can 2 of those apply to the same accessory dwelling unit? I would say yes.
But the 600 square feet has nothing to do with an additional unit. It has to do with lot coverage.
Right.
So I guess what I'm asking is like, could we be going in the other direction? Could the unintended consequence be that we're allowing someone to overbuild a substandard lot? With all the associated things that come with that, cars and irritated neighbors.
Well, it's already in here that you can create 2 with a special use permit accessory dwelling units.
But not on substandard lots. Because,
I mean, if the concern, maybe if the preference is that this is only for 1, you might need to explicitly state that, I would say. This can only be for 1 accessory dwelling unit and not if there's already an accessory dwelling unit
So
property, this can't, I mean, I guess this is gonna be a very rare case.
but I'm sorry, Allison, I apologize for interrupting. As I read this, you can have no more than 3 dwelling units. If you were on a substandard lot and you wanted to do 2 of them, you would still be limited to the 600 square foot bonus, if you will.
I would say so, yes, absolutely.
So you would,
Yes,
you would, even if you were doing 2, they would still be, there would be a pretty severely constrained size. That's not a position. I'm just thinking through it out loud.
And you're going through special use permit.
Right.
Which is a process. I'll say an arduous process by intention, like just testing.
When was the last one that got turned down?
What is the last one that went through?
They go through virtually every meeting. Yeah.
Okay, then I have one more question. I'm sorry, I'm really dragging this out. I don't mean to, but we also have,
No, can I just go back? Because
Oh, yeah.
I thought what you raised is a good question, because we don't want many cities built on people's property, which is where I think you were worried. But if I'm following it, that's already written in existing language.
You can
So-
have 2,
Okay, plus your main house.
right? No more than 3 dwelling units on the, yeah.
Okay, so that's a different topic. But it's already existing.
so my other question is, like, in addition to this piece of proposed, changes, we also have the one that Chris Warfel brought forward to us, which we haven't really gotten to at this level yet. So do you see any conflict in those 2, Allison, or do you see them working well together? I don't know if I want to like unintentionally do this piecemeal thing where we have good suggestions at war with one another.
So I think it's fair to say, because Allison hasn't, she may have seen Karen's first draft. We've been doing it with the land use lawyer largely. But the focus of that has been reducing the friction points on and the length of getting an approval for a 513. So, you know, if you fit in these boxes, you can move from plan to construction much more quickly. Would you say that?
Yes, and not
Yeah.
looking for 600 square, you know,
Right,
exceptions. to
yes,
subdivision
right,
lot.
right.
So you
It's
could-
sort of a
But
different
does that mean
component.
does that remove Sven's arduous approval process?
I don't think for the second, no, I
No.
don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
I don't think so, Molly. It's a really good question. I hadn't, when I was reading it, even contemplated what you're raising.
I'm done.
I feel like I tripped on the wire twice, so I'm making sure.
Please,
Okay,
go ahead, Sven.
so, I make a motion to accept the accessory dwelling unit by special use permit changes to section F and section F as documented, the change already notified the common council. So that's a motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I am going to vote for this, largely because of my commitment to accessory dwelling units as being an essential component. I hope I'm doing the right thing. I really do. I worry. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. It's adopted.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And now you don't have to go and talk to them about 30 years.
All right. I would make a motion. Thank you for all your work on that, Mark. Really appreciate it. And except for that problematic member in the back. We're on item number 5, hold public hearing and discuss an act on proposed amendment to New Shoreham zoning ordinance section 602 administration enforcement and duties. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Okay. Who's walking us through this one?
I'll walk you through this one.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary Ann.
So what's before you this evening?
Good evening, Mary Ann. How are you tonight?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. Has come up in a lot of our different zoning ordinance, we already have similar language. We're including zoning official or designee, specifically as it relates to issuing NOVs and things of that nature. As you're well aware, we are a small town and we have limited staff, and sometimes staff need to recuse themselves for a number of reasons. And we've had experience in that recently with the zoning official and the position. So what we've, working with the land use attorney, came up with language or designee, and therefore, someone as a designee can issue a notice of violation. And if you look at the charter talks about the DPW director being involved with zoning enforcement.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking that most likely will be the designee. However, we chose not to specifically identify. Again, we're a small community, limited staff, and decided to go with the words or designee. We see the or designee or something like that. We've seen in the historic districts, rules and regulations and other places with the zoning ordinance. So what's before you this evening is strictly add an or designee in a couple of spots. That will be very beneficial to the town and staff.
Are there any questions for Mary Ann or comments? Or comments from the public? Sorry, I forgot we're in a public hearing. No,
So from a
let's
process
close the
perspective.
public hearing.
Oh, okay.
So moved.
Second, is there a second? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We're closed. Okay, Neil.
So it seems like makes complete sense to me based on the incident with the wall. Do we need to have a process where you document the designee in, and not in the document, but when the handoff happens and we say Susie's acting as, that the town is documenting that, so we don't have the, well, I said it, but I wasn't really in the role. I just want to make sure we don't have issues with that.
Good question.
It's good documentation.
It'll be strictly documentation, and also I'll probably come forward to the council saying who I think the designee will be.
So you have in mind a designee as opposed to situational designees.
I think we'll be okay with a designee.
So
because
for
that
example,
leaves
if you
it-
had a zoning official and a DPW director who both had, for different reasons, a conflict, you might have a designee who is unusual, right? So I mean, I guess I would caution to have as much flexibility as you possibly can on this, because that might happen.
Yeah, the way you wrote
And- yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Worry about when the
handoff Yes.
happen, it's very clear. They have
How do you see that working? Like you would sort of do a memo to Mike saying whatever so-and-so is.
What would happen, and it happens already, general, and in this case, the zoning official, we have something that's come before that she says, I need to
Yeah.
recuse. And I said, Mike, stop running with this. She needs to recuse. You know, we can get the land use attorney involved to get you up to speed and things like that. It's going to be a process. It's going to take time because Mike's not going to be up to speed overnight. And if he is,
Sure.
God
Right,
bless him.
Right,
So that it'll basically be the DPW director.
right.
So I like what Neil is saying though, like if I recuse or if Martha recuses, we have to fill out paperwork. So it should be twofold. There should be paperwork from the person who is
That's a really
recusing,
good point. Yeah.
but also I think from you designating someone, right? Like a two-step thing.
We can come up with a simple form saying recuse and sign. Yeah.
The email, if I'm recusing and sending it to you before it's on and say you're in charge. I mean, as long as it's the inbox there.
Actually, I sort of like the process thing of a document, just for clarity. I mean, just, and then if somebody comes into Millie and says, wait a minute, this person was there, and she's like, I don't even know. I just think it's very clear that Sue, or whatever name you used a minute ago, is the person that is.
You hear it, Marianne, right?
Yep, and I'm gonna pass it along to the folks involved, and they can come up the form and come put it together and.
I think you've also got to remember, you know, all of this, so-and-so said, so-and-so said, so-and-so said. My mother always used to say, I can write you a quick claim deed to the Spring House. It doesn't mean you're gonna own it.
So we have that going for us. All right, I would make a motion to approve the new ordinance that's before us to section 602 administration, enforcement and duties.
Second.
Is there any discussion of that motion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
I
Those opposed, no. We are all set.
Great, thank you.
All right. So discuss fall planning. Item number 6. This could have said, we have a lot of stuff to do. And as I said, in the memo that I sent to all of you and that Millie put on ClerkBase, this is not intended to be an exhaustive list. It was what could Keith remember that night when he was putting this list together. Some of them, and I don't necessarily want any particular action tonight. I just, you know, we had spoken at our last meeting about, you know, a meeting in September where we might talk about taxi regulation, and you know, we sort of it feels like at every meeting, we get consumed by a particular thing and then forget, at least I do, what we've been talking about for the last several. So property tax classification is a very, very important one. We worked very hard to get the rights that nearly every other town in Rhode Island has to have a much more refined classification system. For those of you in the audience and paying attention at home, the legislature actually passed that this year. And what it enables is right now we have a very a tax structure where you have basically the same rate for all property, regardless of what type of property is, what the relative burden of the property might be on town services, et cetera. So I think one of the things that I would like to do to start this, and I'm glad Amy's on the Zoom as well, is to ask Marianne and Amy, if you don't mind, to put together for our first meeting in September a description of what other towns are doing with this. Just sort of the way that we started when we were pursuing the legislation. You remember, sort of like, what are other towns doing on this? Because you'll find that at least I found that when if you've oh, Siri is actually listening to me. What you'll find is, in my opinion, what I found is that you've seen one town. There's a fair bit of consistency of sort of residential property, commercial property, but a lot of differences, sort of in between. And Marianne, I hope that doesn't put too much of a burden on you, but I think that might be a worthwhile place to start and a worthwhile place to start catalyzing a conversation. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned this, I was going to look at the League of Cities and Towns website.
Yeah.
And municipal finance. They may have that already.
Yes,
put together with.
that'd be wonderful. Yeah. Amy, feel free to chime in here. But
we started that backbone
What's that?
earlier. We started that backbone earlier,
Right.
and so adding to it and updating it shouldn't be burdensome.
Great, thank you, Amy. Short-term rentals, just for background, based upon the feedback we got at our last work session, I did some work, and I worked particularly on the findings of the town council and some of the elements. Sent that to Molly and Nick, and I think we'll be ready to have another work session probably in early September. Would you say? Ish. Traffic and transportation is a big one. I don't know about you guys, but I get probably more feedback on traffic and transportation issues than I get on anything else. And I don't even know whether that's the right title for this, but the need to have, the need to have our policies match up with what I think over the next few years is going to be a dramatic increase in a new type of vehicle, these low-speed electric vehicles that are now permitted. And by the way, I'm not saying that necessarily as a negative. I mean, I think we could shape a policy where, maybe that becomes a positive. We've got to work on that. We've got to work on shuttle ideas, whether that's RIPTA, the town, private entity, whatever, I think that is a conversation we've got to have as a town. And I know Neil and I have talked about that quite a bit. And I don't know whether this sticks out to you, but we had, we're vested by the legislature, by state law, to be the regulatory entity for our taxis. And I don't think we've looked at those regs in decades, would be my bet. And I think we gotta at least read them and say, is all of this stuff still relevant, given the traffic burdens that we have? We went over a lot of the housing stuff. I know that we have that Neil's work is ongoing on parking with Marianne and the chief. And Martha, I put building and zoning update on here because I think you and I assume others, not even substantively change the zoning ordinance, but I think at some point we need to have some sort of a rational conversation around how does it all still hang together? How can we make it more readable and accessible? All of those kinds of things.
Yeah, I can just speak to that quickly. I've mentioned this before. We've had various things have been added over the years. There was a substantial rewrite that had to do with nothing more than making the town ordinances comply with state law. The major rewrite was in 1989.
Yeah.
And it was a huge project that went on for a couple of years. And one of the things that, I'm gonna go way down the weeds.
It's okay.
Yeah. I'm old and I know stuff, get over it. Like HDC has never been aligned with zoning, and that just makes me bonkers. When HDC was first put in, it was the business zone we had one business zone, went from Old Harbor to New Harbor and everything in between. And that and what was residential C at the time were put into HDC. Then the 1989 revision came and we added the service utility, we added the mixed use. We made Old Harbor commercial separate from New Harbor commercial. Oh, the town did. There were a whole lot of restructuring on the zoning map. But that's why there are places that seem particularly oddly not in historic district that maybe ought to be. And I think that's probably the only real overlay that we have but it's really like the Barrington is not in historic district.
Mm-hmm.
I know years ago, the historic district did try to change it, but they pushed, they went a bridge too far and they included the cemetery, and the council didn't think that was a great idea. If you didn't leave us alone, basically, and it never got beyond that. And that's honest. I'm not even making that up. I know where we were sitting when that happened. I don't have to make stuff up.
No, and
it's all real. But that's a good example of something that shouldn't be that. And I know over time there have been so many changes. I know Jen knows, our land use official knows everything pretty much inside and out. But it's really convoluted for somebody walking in, I think.
I would actually say it's been bolted on so many times, the average person can't figure out where the first bolt is.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of where.
It's at times they even not quite contradict, but they sure make gray areas.
yeah,
And I think we have to have, I feel like we give no direction to the planning board on what we want, and then we wonder why things happen the way they happen.
or don't happen.
Or
At
don't
all,
happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And I think, by the way, for all of these things and the ones we will undoubtedly add, each one may require their own approach. In other words, on the zoning thing, it may be that, we ask Marianne, Karen, Jen, Mike,
It's
to,
probably more than that.
and I'm just saying that each one may require its own sort of way to get there.
We probably should all have to be required to read all the ordinances.
Yes.
Neil's the only one that knows.
On that one.
Yeah.
So the only other one that I think we should have on the list, are we brainstorming? Another
Yes.
idea? Okay, would be licensing, just in general. We have the outdoor license. We've had other conversation on some of the licenses individually or in here. So I think kind of reviewing those, and those tend to come up the end of the year, right? So
Yep.
we got to get on if we're
Yeah.
gonna propose
Right.
changes.
That's a good one. Yeah.
The two areas that I would also add to the list, and actually, I don't know whether there's agreement to it. I think Neil did such a good job on parking, so my question is that still a major area? And I know there's still a lot of work to do, but.
I thought there were more things.
Yes, sir.
There's more stuff. I mean, I can bring that back. I'll keep working with the group. So
Great.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
of all the prior, the one that we've heard a lot, at least I've heard over the last 6 years, pretty much continuously, is around noise outdoor. And I am leaving that very ambiguous for the moment, which is just, whether it's
Mhm.
somebody at the Spring House, the Atlantic, whatever it may be, and it's not clear. And a little bit to the licensing, suddenly, when do you
Mhm.
how do you deal with that? The next one is, of all the areas on the island that I think need assistance, because it's on the brink of chaos, is New Harbor. And we've talked about, New Harbor plans, or do we do studies? What do we do? I mean, you who fish a lot, that whole area is a nightmare, and the boat, So I just keep wondering whether New Harbor is something that we shouldn't lose sight of, because I fear that it's just going to be worse and worse.
Yes.
and worse
And are you talking about land and water?
Land, water, parking,
Okay.
layout, structure,
Traffic.
danger.
Yes.
I mean, it's just somewhere between Champlin's and the fire department.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's just, so those are just two others in
Yeah.
licensing that I think should be, again, long-term goals.
David?
Thank you, David Lewis, for the record. Before the list gets too long, I think you might have omitted something that came up late last spring that was certainly took an hour's time worth of time by the council that night, and it wasn't totally resolved. You'll all remember that Ryan McGarry was in asking for a quick turnaround increase in rates for dumping garbage and everything else down there. And one of the conversations that didn't seem to have a lot of answers to it was the combination of, is everybody paying their fair share for various kinds of disposal? That included the commercial establishments who have different set of recycling rules, that some of them follow well, some of them don't follow well. To me personally, the most disturbing one was the reality that it appeared that all of the houses that were being torn down were paying the 15-cent demolition rate that everybody else pays. And that just seems patently unfair that people are buying houses, tearing them down, and the community is somehow subsidizing that disposal, because that has a major impact on our tipping rates on an annual basis, plus our allocations. So I would just ask you, unless I've missed something, I don't know if there's been any
No.
work done on that.
It's a great example of what I was saying, which is you move on.
And I think that I thought you'd appreciate me bringing it up, because there are more demolitions coming.
Yes,
So thank you.
yes. Anything, Sean?
The one that I thought David was going to bring up, which should just be on all our eyes and radars, is revenue. And where are there more areas to get revenue for the town?
And that fits with
Which could be
licensing.
licensing,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's even broader than that. But so if licensing includes revenue, then I'm hugely.
I have one other thing, and it's town land. And this seems to come up periodically and disappear and come up and disappear, but we have boundaries that are marked, that are ignored. We have, I mean, these are things that shouldn't be, we shouldn't have to say, if it's town land, you can't build on it. I mean, this whole thing is boggling my mind. Really defining what belongs to the town, getting rid of it, and Tom finally found that somebody had the records all this time of the land at the center that is not ours, that, you know, I've been saying for years, it's iffy. So it just, to really get a solid inventory on that we just don't seem to have. I think David spoke to old rights of way that are, you know, they're somewhere in some record, but absent having a land search, you know, people aren't going to find them. It just feels like we've got all these bits and pieces, and there's all this work that's been done. We have surveys. We have that old, when the piece of land that is Scotch Beach Road was given to the town way back when by Barbie Michelle's great grandfather or whatever. There was a caveat in it. If it ever became a road, the wall was supposed to be removed, and it became a road, and I think the wall is still in the road. And things like that, they just, you know, I just feel like we just, everything gets, you know, our list is already too long. That's the problem.
No, I don't think it's too long for now. You know, I mean, I think it's really important. And I think, you know, one of the things that I really hope that we're all communicating is we need to plan. You know, we need to think about these things over the long term. And I know I feel that I get, for me, I get sort of sucked into a particular vortex where I'm spending a lot of time, and meanwhile, there's stuff I'm not working on. So one of the things I would suggest, and you know, maybe for our first meeting in September, we actually put this list together again, get a sense of what's, you know, urgent to work on, and then figure out for each one. You know, it may be that whatever, Sven is particularly passionate about one thing, and, you know, I trust Sven to work on stuff. Molly may be passionate about the, you know, because this is not a terribly efficient way to deal with a lot of these issues. So anyway, if that meets with people's approval,
First meeting is September.
great. Item number 7, Chris Crawford from the chamber sent us a letter and wanted to speak about these two matters. How are you, Chris? What's that? Oh, yeah, thank you. For people who are watching on YouTube, the town manager, Marianne Crawford, is leaving the council meeting for this part because her wonderful husband is going to be presenting to the council.
She told me just keep talking.
Back.
So just 2 quick things, so not to take a lot of time. One is the Visitor Center Chamber of Commerce building down in town. I know that we had talked about the lease on that being extended. It's going to come up again really quick.
Yes.
There is a lot of work that needs to be done down there. The plumbers are there every single day. Those toilets just do not work. We even, as crazy as it is, we actually had someone steal a woman's toilet seat this week, unbolt it and take it with them out the door, which is pretty amazing. I have no idea.
My room 10 was missing a toilet seat. Sorry.
It's just incredulous.
His room 10 was missing.
But some simple things we need down there, sanitary stations for people to change babies and little kids. We need more, the lockers need to be redone. The thing is, I don't want to do it piecemeal if we're going to take a comprehensive approach on that
Yes.
building, which we probably need to do. The traffic pattern around that building is horrific. Someone is going to get killed, I think, sooner or later. We've had multiple accidents down there with people who stop, trip, fall because of cars, and end up having to be taken to the medical center and in some cases taken off the island. There needs to be some thought on shade. A lot of elderly people.
Yes.
It gets very hot. They have nowhere to hide from the shade. So they all jam in together. They all smoke cigarettes. They all throw them on the ground. And every single morning we're out there cleaning that stuff.
Which is
So-
fair to say we need to re-envision the whole thing.
Yeah, we
right?
need to redo the whole thing.
Yeah.
So the sooner that we can put together some kind of a committee to get that process underway, the better we're going to be.
Yep.
The second part of this was
Just remind me when the lease, I know it
We
was
extended it for
January
6 months, I think.
and it's good till when?
January, I think.
To December, end of
Yeah,
December.
December
Yeah.
31st.
But just to make sure, that building is, just so everybody knows, that building is actually owned by the Radowskis, they do London side, John, and his son sort of running things now. We were in discussions 3 to 4 years ago, pre-COVID. And they were ready to renovate, they wanted to do stuff, then COVID sort of came and the skids happened.
No, it's,
So-
it's our building.
But the land is.
Oh, the land, yes.
Yeah, we have the building, they own the land, we really can't do much without their blessing. And so as part of that lease sort of continues to move, but there is an end to that lease. Or at least a renewal of that lease.
And again, the town has the lease and then we lease it to the.
Yes,
Yes.
we have the lease to put our building on that.
There's a lot of things that need to go into that thought process down there. So if we can maybe attack that with some kind of a committee that focuses on it. There's a long list of needs. There's now 25 boats on a Saturday landing down there, and you've now got boats direct from Orient Point, Long Island coming in. You've got boats from, just from everywhere. So think of all those thousands of people coming off those boats at the same time. It's like a giant cruise port all coming in together, and the building just doesn't, it can't satisfy everybody. We're completely overwhelmed much of the time. Plus, there's a very large international group that's now coming in, so we need more language. We need media to be able to work with a lot of those folks that we're not doing a very good job with. So just thought process.
Great.
Second thing,
Let me just jump in there. Conversations they're open to letting us do stuff, correct? For the building? Yeah.
They want to work together, and yes, they're very open, and they were ready to actually fund most of the whole project, or maybe long-term payouts and all, but there's a dialogue, yes, we just have to reignite it.
the second thing is we want to try to start a three-year project. I love your comments on planning. Start small, build and get bigger. In the winter, to extend the season out here a little bit, we applied to the state for a large grant for decorating downtown for the holidays, fixing up the front of it. We were notified this week that we got the grant, although I haven't actually gotten the paperwork for it. But in extending that season, looking at the holiday stroll, Thanksgiving to New Year's, we'd like to do a week in December where we actually close Weldon's Way. And we make that an outdoor holiday park, if you will. So 12 Christmas trees, 1 tree for each grade. It's a contest to decorate it, fix it up, make it look good. Plastic ice skating rinks where people can ice skate. We don't have to rely on cold weather ice. Lights everywhere, bringing in choral groups, perhaps food trucks, depending upon the number of restaurants that are open. Many other events that we have in our minds to make it a Norman Rockwell type holiday that'll bring people from the other side over who are willing to spend weekends and other nights here and enjoy the island in a different setting and in a different light. So that is one of the processes we wanted to bring up. I don't know what it entails. I'm sure there's you know, you got to notify 911, you got to do a lot of different things, but I'm just thinking in December, Weldon's Way is not that busy, other than it's a cut-through street for most people. But if we could put the ice skating rink in there, we could do a tailgate party. There's a Patriots game on a Thursday night. That might be fun for the island to do out there with heat lamps and that kind of a thing. So different events each night of the week that make it attractive to the islanders who are here, and at the same time to people who are off the island. But to get that process going from planning, we want to get it going this year and then build on it, build it out from there.
I think that's a cool idea. What do you need from us?
Just approval to move ahead, and the big thing is closing Weldon's Way. So I think doing that for a 7-day period of time or an 8-day period of time, you know, setting off the Charlie horses or whatever, just to block it, letting everybody know it's not a cut through. What I don't want to have is people racing through there when you got kids running around. Where, you know, we looked into renting snow machines for snow kinds of things, doing a lot of different creative applications.
I think that's a really cool idea.
But it seems there are really two separate subjects, right? The first one was about facilities and issues around facilities. The second one is the really cool idea.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
there.
That's why they say 1 and 2. so-
Yeah, I know. I don't want to end this conversation with how excited we are with 2, and then 1 doesn't get talked about again. So I just want to make sure that, I think, what can we do? 1 is what we can do.
Well, the first one is if we can develop a committee that can at least start the process, bring it back here, and then, you know, have you guys all take a look at it and see what you think.
Sure.
It's just that building has outlived
Yes.
its use.
Yes. No doubt. It's pretty uninviting at this point. That's the word that,
If you haven't been in those bathrooms, they are just,
They're not very welcome.
no, they are early in the morning, and now we're cleaning them also midday. But still, I mean, the ventilation is awful.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah.
They need reworking, and we also need to keep them open in the winter. So maybe double the bathrooms, close half of them down in the winter, leave the other ones open with heat. We're down there every single day of the week, except in the winter, we take Sundays off, so we're constantly there monitoring them all the time, but it
Chris,
just needs some thought.
on the Weldon's Way thing, can we talk about what you would need the town to do there? You know, and then as you refine your ideas, you know, at some point, hopefully in September, you know, we can actually have a detailed conversation
Yeah,
about it.
I
So
think,
that we're on
I
top
think the
of it.
big problem is the legal, making sure that we could close Weldon's Way for that period of time. The rest of it, you know, I'm gonna look to get help from some of the businesses.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna use some of that grant from the state, which I do, you know, I mean, they sent us an email saying you've won, you've been
Yeah.
granted it. So I'm hoping to be able to use some of that money and then again, build on it each year a little bit more.
Sure. Gotcha.
Once we get a feel for
Yep.
what works and what doesn't.
It's interesting.
Well, we know definitive, back to my town land thing.
Yeah.
Weldon's Way actually does belong to us. That,
Yes.
there's no question about that. Shirley and I know where the map is in the vault for the condemnation of
Right.
Weldon's Way.
Right.
That we don't have to do a lot of research to figure that one out.
I think we would have to have a lot more detail
Mhm.
than, I mean, this is one sentence. So a lot more detail about the exact plans before we can vote on closing a road,
Yeah.
right? And-
Yeah.
We have-
Yeah. That's,
okay.
yeah,
But
that's
I think
us.
we have to, are we open to closing the road? Because if we're not open to closing the road, there's no point in getting detailed plans.
I think there's wind in your sails.
Yeah, I'm not opposed
Oh.
to closing the road, but,
I didn't
No,
take it that way
yeah.
at all. No, that's why you know, I think we need to refine the ideas and.
Needs a lot of
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah,
I ran events all over the world.
but
50 countries for companies from Mercedes-Benz to Goldman Sachs. Believe me, the devil is in the details.
yes,
So
right.
that's why I like to start small and grow.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think it's a very cool idea.
And I think it's very nice that you refer to Weldon's Way as a Norman Rockwell setting.
Well, the other thing is in the winter, nothing is
Norwood
open on that
Rockwell.
road, so I think the department store uses it for employee parking and to load and unload some stuff, but the restaurants are closed. At least right now. Who knows? They may say, look at all these people we want to
Yeah.
open, and that's actually part of
Yeah,
what they want to see.
absolutely. Absolutely. This is really great, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks.
Get the ice cream
Thank
place to be open.
All right, Amy, you ready? We have to tell Mary Ann that she's, thank you. Hi, Amy.
Hi,
How are you today?
good, how are you?
Fantastic. Do you want to start, please?
Sure.
I'm just looking for your report because I know Millie emailed it and now I can't.
Hey, Amy, your
Well-
connection's not great.
Let me take away some video.
Much better.
Better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Before we get into the financials, I'd like to give the council and the public an update on the tax bills, which are due August 15th, which was yesterday, and have not been received by our taxpayers. So they are at the printers. There has been a series of circumstances leading to their delayed issuances. That includes revaluation, which always creates a tight timetable
Right.
for turnaround. A software deployment last fall that created issues that we didn't uncover until it was time to set the roll. And then the fire that Joan had, of course, last month, just as we were really marshaling those resources and took time and attention away from the work that we needed to do exactly at that moment. So all those things together pushed us well behind schedule. As I said, they are at the printers and are expected to arrive in mailboxes towards the end of next week. We do think that by Friday of this week, taxpayers will be able to call the office and ask about their balances if they choose to do that. When we are ready for people to do so, we'll post to both the bulletin board and the town website and let people know what the phone number is and that they can call the finance office if they choose. I've also spoken with the town manager and we both agree that it would be appropriate at this point to extend the grace period, which typically runs to August 31st out to September 30th. So just that calendar again, the due date is August 15th. We hold a grace period to August 31st, and we would recommend or suggest that we'll extend that grace period to September 30th. So that only applies to customers whose balances are current. If there are past due balances, those will continue to accrue interest as they typically would.
Amy, can you and or Mary Ann, can you do that administratively or does that require action by us?
I would suggest the Monday holiday threw me on this one. Otherwise, I would have, whether it was necessary or not, put it in front of you as an action item. I think I'd like to have the council retroactively ratify that, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Can I ask a question, Amy? When normally do those tax bills go out? If everything had been working right?
Sure, they're usually go out the last week of July, so somewhere between July 20th and August 1st.
So they're about 2-3 weeks late.
Yeah.
And we're extending 4 weeks. Or are we extending 6 weeks or 4? Or like, in other words, is this September 15th with the grace period is September 30th?
No, so the due date doesn't change, and that's actually an important distinction. Because the grace period, which typically is August 31st, the last day of the month, allows you to get that payment in. If your payment is not in by the end of the grace period, interest accrues back to the due date. So the due date doesn't change, but we're extending that grace period. The grace period, I would suggest, goes to September 30th. The due date will always be and continues to be August 15th.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Amy.
Any questions on that before we move on to financials?
Not for me. No, we're gonna, Amy's gonna do a resolution that is retroactive.
That'll be on the September agenda.
So you do have July financials in front of you. This is an early look, of course, at fiscal year 2024. We're really just getting started. It's more a reminder of the budget that we all put together last May. In general, seasonal revenues are strong. There aren't any surprises. It's really just getting the year off the ground. So I'm happy to take questions, but there's not too much to share at this point.
So my only observation, hearing, I know Jess is here as well, but I am hearing a fair amount of softness, and I don't know how the hotels are. So I'm thinking about hotel use taxes, etc. And if the early warning signals are 10%, 20% down, we should just be thinking of that implication to taxes. And let it prove itself out, but I guess caution to the wind versus an aggressive summer in the last few years where it's been so positive.
Well, I think, Amy, you were using the trend of Rhode Island. The state was saying it was going to be down. So I think you were very conservative in what you put in the budget, correct?
Yes, we did not push the numbers aggressively when we assembled the budget, so it should be reasonable. I'm also not necessarily seeing that scale of softness. It is very early, so you won't see July hotel or meals numbers until September. The one bit that we do have on page 6, you can see under hotel and cottage sales tax, the month to date number 18,396 is the cottage tax only. And that comes on a slightly different timetable, but you can see the year to year 18.3 versus 21.6 is not a huge difference. Across the board, beach revenue is actually consistent. New Harbor revenues are higher. Old Harbor is off, but off enough that I actually want to validate it rather than saying that it is actually down. That's something we're looking into further. So I'm really not seeing anything in the, I think 10% feels a little bit more dire than what we're seeing so far, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, so we had a tourism council meeting this morning. And I think they were saying Springhouse said maybe around 10%. Okay. But the boat has been quoted as 30% off ridership.
Sure doesn't look like it on Saturdays and Sundays.
But that's interstate, isn't it? And I don't know what the Orient Point is doing. That's only a couple days a week, isn't it? It sure look, I agree with you. It doesn't look, although somebody said one day, and I think it was somebody in here, I just been downtown. It felt the same way, that it felt crazy, but not busy, which is an odd distinction, but it really very much felt that way. Everything just seemed like wacky people all over the place, but not the kind of, people carrying bags around that I'm used to seeing and things like that in the summer. But who knows? That's just what I'm seeing.
The other metric I would share, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but sewer water flows, I think, are looking about 4% off of last year. And of course, you always get in trouble comparing yourself to a peak. That's never how we want to be budgeting or expecting revenues to come in. But 4% off of last year is still a pretty strong number.
Right. Amy, thank you as always for all your work. We really appreciate it.
If I can also hijack Mary Ann's report, I have a little bit of a broadband update.
Yes.
And I might as well get that out of the way. I did want to make sure that, again, the council and the public was aware that we are targeting a September 1st deadline for customers to subscribe for service. And so we would like everyone's applications for service to be in by September 1st. We expect that throughout the month of September, Surtex will complete all home installations. And so after that point, those joining the network after the initial deployment will be responsible for installation, mobilization, and equipment costs that are currently being waived for people in their primary structures. So
Can I
the
ask-
price,
Can I just ask you for clarification?
sure.
You say at that point, is that point when everyone who's in the queue is installed, or is that September 1st?
We want applications in by September 1st. Although your actual install date will
Right.
likely be during the month of September.
So if I don't have my install request in by September 1st, if I have it in on September 3rd, I'm gonna be paying.
Yes.
Gotcha. I just think this is one of those, tell them what you're gonna tell them what you told them, you know, whole thing over and over and over again, because Amy's phone is going to be ringing off the hook September 2nd, 3rd through the 10th with sob stories about not people who somehow it's not their fault and they want their stuff for free.
Signed up.
What's that?
I think I'm signed up.
Yeah, will you make sure Martha's signed up, Amy?
Martha is all set. And, if everyone could spread the word, we are
Yes.
sending email reminders to anyone whose email address is in the system. And we are doing some phone calling and reaching out to those who might be more
Wonderful.
technically challenged. But tell your friends.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
We've had it for about a week at our house, Amy, and it's pretty fabulous.
Oh, you got it.
Thank you. Yeah,
Fabulous.
finally.
Tremendous.
All the people in section 10.
Yes, thank you for everyone's patience.
It really is extraordinary. It's a real triumph, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mary Ann.
So you have my town manager's report before you tonight. There is one thing I would like to make the council aware of. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we launched what was called OpenGov, which was an automated building permit system, which now building permits can be applied for online anywhere in the state, anywhere someone is, as long as they have access to it. And pleased to report, Millie and the town clerks has also launched it through
great.
OpenGov, all the licenses. So this year, all the licenses will be, folks will be able to put their application online. That helps in another way. It eliminates the traffic into town hall and people. Not that we don't mind people coming
Yes,
to
yes.
town hall, but it does help facilitate
That's terrific.
the licensing process, reduces the paperwork and things of that nature. Like anything else, there'll be growing pains and transition pains, and I'm sure the town clerks will work with folks as we go through this transition. But it's another venue that we are now doing through an online process, which from the building official and online process for building permits. It's been extremely successful.
Can I ask a question about the functionality of that system? And are there other areas where you hope to deploy it? You know what I mean? Is it, I don't know, we talk about parking tickets and, other, is that on the OpenGov platform or?
At this point, I haven't explored some of the other things, like when
Yeah.
we first went on with the building permits, some town clerks were already doing the licenses.
Right.
So now we're in the step 2.
Yes.
So what we need to do is look at and see what other communities have done, because we're such a small community.
Yeah.
We're not the beta test for something like this. So it'll be interesting to see what other places
Yeah.
are doing.
And it'll
I
be-
know, I think like things like fire inspections, other places have done fire permits and stuff like that.
There must be 10 things that you guys think about, like if only that could be online. And I just wonder what the priorities are and whether that system's going to work for it. And I think from, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think you have a council that's willing to invest in that, because I think, particularly now that everybody has broadband,
Well,
we've got
that's,
the
that's a huge game.
the gas
changer for
pedal
us.
needs to go to the
Huge,
floor on
huge
this
game
stuff.
changer, because now folks like
Yes,
Molly just said 2 weeks ago, she couldn't do
Yes.
anything, and now it's amazing what she can do. So I
Absolutely.
think we'll probably start seeing some more and more transition.
Right.
I know like they do stuff with recreation, they're doing
yeah,
stuff with
right.
harvest,
Good.
so
I didn't even.
we're really making some leaps and bounds in
Right.
that area since I first started. So I'm
Mhm.
really pleased, and I'm sure we'll continue.
That's great stuff.
So I know when I talked to the land use officer about the short-term rental
Right.
ordinance. She said that that is something that could be.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another one.
If we were to pass.
And I think on that one, making it as easy as possible from the get-go will help with adoption and, reducing friction.
Do you think that that could be used for recreation sign up, or would that be a different? platform?
I think I would keep that separate because there's also the application. There's a little more with the recreation, so I may keep that one separate, at least for now. That may change.
Right.
That may change.
Cool.
The one item that I didn't see on there, and we missed her on the last one because of her call. When is Kristen's last day, or is she?
If I remember correctly, her last
14th.
day, I thought was, I was gonna say the 14th of September, and I
Okay.
think she's scheduled for the agenda of the next meeting in September.
Okay,
She wasn't available tonight, unfortunately. so,
I think she's scheduled to work tonight.
Yes. All right. Anything else?
The only other thing, I noticed you talked about state troopers over the holiday. I'll tell you, the Coast Guard was amazing as well. And having met a couple of boats, having 2 or 3 Coast Guard officers on a boat and state troopers, it just changed the tone as people were getting off the boat and they were all standing there and welcoming people, I guess,
Yeah.
a nice way to phrase it.
Yes.
So just, I can't thank Coast Guard, state troopers and all this else, what we got, and obviously the chief.
Presence we've learned is quickly becoming 90% of our battle.
Say that again?
I said presence is becoming 90% of our balance of battle, having these extra troopers.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah.
And I was excited that we have the new senior services coordinator.
Yes,
Starting in a matter of days, I guess, next week, Monday, Monday, the
Fantastic.
21st.
fantastic. Anything else for Mary Ann before we move on to appointments? Item number 10, board, commission and committees. We do have an application or a request that's ripe from Dorothy Finley to be on the Conservation Commission.
Love it.
Well, and I would make a motion to appoint Dorothy Finley to the Conservation Commission. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Dorothy.
she's a great
thank
pick.
you. Yes.
Yeah.
That's 2 in a row we've had their wins. And then we have vacancies, water for a 1-year term, sewer for a 1-year term, police advisory expires 7/28. Is that John Spears' seat? And is he gonna send us an email? Great. Right, yep, terrific, wonderful. Motion to adjourn? Second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. We're adjourned. Thank you very much, guys. That was a meaty agenda. What's that? What's 24? What? No. I didn't. No. Oh.